And joining the show is the great, the legendary, the iconic, the progeny, Derek Trucks, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. I believe the greatest guitarist of a generation. Derek Trucks, also a bourbon fan. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm excited for this interview. There's not many that you really get excited for. This is beautiful. Me and my brother are both fans, so glad to be here.
Oh, I appreciate that. Now, you know, I get that. I get that a lot in defense of my colleagues, you know, who are interviewing you from like radio stations and stuff. They can't send you bourbon or anything like that, so they might be better if they were sending you bourbon.
That's true. That is true. You should tell him just to go ahead and send some.
Yeah, well, you know, what I've learned in the radio business is most people, you know, they get a sample and then they're supposed to send it to you, but then they drink it all. So
it happens.
You know,
I actually have a bottle I'm going to send to you. So.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, we did a Trucks family barrel pick up at Buffalo Trace and got a good Weller. Pretty incredible.
Oh, is it foolproof?
Yeah.
Nice.
Delicious stuff.
So for those just joining, Derek is formerly with the Allman Brothers, got the Derek Trucks Band. I mean, just so many bands, and he's like the focal point of the sound, in my opinion, for a lot of the things you've done in your career. But one of the super secret things that he's had is he's had a bourbon connection all these years that he's used to stock up and pile up that big old backdrop you see behind you, and if you're watching this on the screen. So tell us about your bourbon hookup over the years.
Well, you know, it started when we were touring in Kentucky in our Winnebago. This guy that we call the Viking would show up with a road case, a briefcase that would hold 3 or 4 bottles and maybe 8-10 shot glasses on the top. And originally it was me and Todd Smalley, our old bass player. He would get on the Winnebago, pour some drinks, and be like, "I really like that one with the guy smoking the cigar, and the one with the the stag." And we'd get all of our per diem and give it to him, and he'd run out and grab a few bottles. And this is when you could just buy things off the shelf. So you're talking $79 was high dollar. And and so we would load up and just drink that stuff before we knew what it was. And then everything started changing. He'd show up and he would let us know things were getting harder to find. And then we come back to Florida, and my brother, I hipped him to the Weller 12, and we'd go out and buy everything we could find. It was $27 at the time. And he was smart enough to load up on a lot of that stuff before it became out of reach. So most of the stuff we got then, and then, you know, you trade things. And there was a good 5-6 years on the road where I would just go take walks and look for liquor stores, come back and load up the bus or the whatever vehicle we were in at the time, and I'd get home and my wife would just be like, "Really, you brought more bourbon home?" Like, trust me, eventually this is going to seem like a good idea.
You know, do you drink it all? Do you share it? What do you do with all of it?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we don't really collect. We drink it, and if there's people over that are fans, or if they know what it is, or they just are, you know, like the taste of it, we're not shy with pouring things. So that's why we have it. And, you know, I noticed like certain bottles, you know, you save for special occasions, and sometimes it's sad occasions. Like I remember one night where Warren Haynes' old guitar tech, Brian Farmer, who was a legend. He worked with Johnny Cash. He worked with a ton of people. He was just one of those guys that everybody loved. But he passed away right when we got off the road, and I remember finding out at maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. And Bobby Tees, who's the engineer in my studio, lives right down the street. He worked closely with Farmer, and we were talking. And I was like, "I'm not going back to bed. If you want to come over for a drink." And I was like, "What's the hardest thing I have in the house?" And of course, it's one of those stags that was like 130 something or whatever it was. Yeah. And I remember just sitting around drinking with him, and Sue waking up and coming downstairs, and she's like, "I need one of these." I was like, "I don't think you want to take a shot of this. This might hurt you." and she's crying, and we're laughing, telling stories about Farmer, and she bangs one back, and immediately it comes back up. I just remember thinking, he would have loved that. She's laughing, crying, and so that bottle has been one that whenever we lose somebody, we always go back to it. And but it's you know, it's an amazing thing. You get to share some of these rare things, especially the older bottles that people just you never get to taste things like that. Music is that way too. You hear something from another era and it makes you feel a certain way. And some of the stuff you're drinking is set in a barrel for 15, 20 years, and it's maybe 50, 60 years old. It's something you just can't reproduce, and that's there's a magic in that.
Yeah, talking about, music, I mean, you started getting on the stage at what, 13, 14 years old? You were young.
I was 9 when I started playing and traveling, and feels like a lifetime ago, but you learn so much that way. I think with music, especially the music that I grew up playing, whether it was blues bass or Allman Brothers influenced things, there's no real school for that. You have to be out with old grizzled veterans and be on the road with them, and there's a lot to learn just by being around people. You learn a lot of what to do and what not to do. You learn a lot of musical lessons, a lot of life lessons, and you try to keep your head on straight. But it's I was really fortunate. A lot of the guys that I grew up playing with were world-class musicians, most of them unknown, but that really had a thing, and you just feel blessed to be around them, and you just have to soak it up. There's a lot to learn out there.
So my 1-year-old loves music. I mean, we have music on the house all the time, and anytime before I have a guest on, we sit down on Sunday morning, and I pull up all their music, all their live performances on YouTube. And we were watching you play, and my 1-year-old, he can't really talk, but he can do sign language, and he's saying more.
That's incredible.
And he's only done that with one other band when we do this, and that's the Beatles. So
that's incredible.
You got the same kind of and Crowded House. He does that with Crowded House. So you got the same kind of love as those two great bands. But
well, I hope to meet him someday.
Oh, well, he's gonna say, it's nice to meet you, sir, but let's get the guitar out and let's play. I can see him doing that.
So good.
But it's like, you can see a lot of you can see, the quality of music through the eyes of someone young, and it's like I play some of the the modern pop that's auto-tunes or whatever. They don't want to listen to that. They don't care about that. They're not influenced by the scenes. They love real music, and watching you play is like, man, I've never seen you play in person, but I look forward to that day, and you're just so amazing. It's like the guitar is like sewn to you, and like you're just like feeling every single note. Like I don't even know what that. I'm not even asking you a question. I'm just saying like how awesome you are.
I look forward to you coming out, man. I look forward to getting out and playing again someday. It's been that's the longest I've ever sat without doing a gig. I mean, everyone's in the same boat, but I think when we finally get back out there, it's definitely going to be a different feeling. I think, we've always tried to really be aware of how fortunate we are to do what we do. I mean, we know playing music is a gift, and my dad was a roofer. I grew up, doing that kind of work with him from time to time, and realizing the difference between a real job and what we get to do. I mean, it's hard, you travel, but we're really fortunate. But I think what we've been going through lately puts that in a whole different light, and so I'm excited to get back on the road and playing music again, and I look forward to seeing you out there, and maybe a good bus hang afterwards. we always keep the bus stocked, so.
Well, let's just say that I'll be bringing something, you'll have something. That bus hang might turn into something special, I
look forward to it.
Well, we do have some things to taste, and I have a confession to make to you, Derek. I sent you the Weller I sent you, and the let's see, the Parker's Heritage I sent you. I've got the Parkers. I ran out of the Weller. My wife came over and took that from me. So my wife's a big bourbon fan.
I love it.
Your wife's complaining about not having the having too much. Mine's like, why are you keeping that bottle in the office? It needs to be home. So she grabbed that bottle,
That's
And
awesome.
so, and then she also.
I will say Susan has come around. She is she is down for the count now. She'll be involved in the bourbon hang.
That's good. So what I sent you is a different single barrel than what I have. So she got the single barrel that you have. I do have another Weller single barrel, but they're going to be different. But they, by
Gotcha.
virtue of being single barrel. they'll
Now
be
is
different.
this
And then
the new single barrel? Is that right?
I'm going to be
Or like the unreleased?
I'm going
or the
to
one...
be polishing off.
Yes.
We're going to be
Beautiful.
polishing this off together, my friend.
That's exciting.
So this is the greatest Parker's heritage of all time, in my opinion. And then the Jefferson's Reserve is kind of is like a standard everyday pour these days, and my wife took that one as well. So
I love it. I love it.
so you're getting a little bit of family drama.
I
But
look
I
forward
think,
to meeting her too. Actually.
oh boy, she is she's something, and she loves music. We that's one of our things is we love going and singing live music, and just kind of hanging out and and she's got a voice on her too. I remember watching you all on NPR, and I was thinking to myself, this is the kind of setting that my wife, she's got a kind of a jazzy voice, and her dream is to be a lounge singer, even though she's never done any singing like that, but she's cool.
I love it. I love it.
Well, shall we get to it here? Let's do some Weller single barrel. Now, of course, this is their latest line extension. This is This is basically a 97 proof product. They're kind of known for having either the Special Reserve or the Weller Antique. And then you have the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, William Lee Weller. So they are coming to it with a single barrel now. I love it. You're rocking the Glencairns.
Yeah, man. I don't think I've had a Weller that I haven't enjoyed.
Weller's it's good.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one yet. This is the first. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, that's my speed. Love that. That's delicious.
It's pretty tasty.
Oh man, that one sticks with you too.
Yeah. Got a nice long finish, kind of velvety for me,
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love the I'm assuming this one's wheat forward, right? This is a
This is a wheated bourbon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the Wellers in this one. Just I love this. It's sweet, but it's not overly sweet at all. Like a sweet bourbon can. I don't go back to it very often, but something about the Weller mash bill that's just incredible.
It's funny because that is the Wellers for a lot of people tend to be sweet. They tend to be like a little bit caramel balmy.
Yeah.
But this definitely has a lot of balance. It's got that nice balance of sweet and spice. It's really nice. The only problem is it's a single barrel.
Yeah.
So because we're tasting two different bottles, the
hear
bottle
you.
that I'm tasting might be very different than what you're tasting.
And I knew that from hearing that that's the way it was with single barrels. But when we did the one barrel pick that we did, they rolled out 4 barrels, and I was shocked at how. I mean, you could tell they were the same bourbon, but they were really different. They were really different from barrel to barrel, and so that. But I think this probably. I bet there's enough similarities here where we're drinking the same thing. I love the 97 proof. I gotta say, I'm a big bonded whiskey fan, but there's something really nice about the 97. I don't know if I've had anything that's specifically 97.
This is just this is smelling good and tasting right.
Yeah. I would never not want to drink that bourbon. That's a great bourbon. I love that.
I think that's a really nice way to put it. I would never not want to drink this.
I mean, there's some bourbons that I love that I after a glass, that's all I need for the night, or it's not something you want to go back to often. Some things have, I don't want to say too much personality, but they're very individual. And yeah, that's an all day bourbon. I think the Special Reserve is usually, that's kind of our house whiskey here. And I definitely prefer this to that. And I love the Special Reserve, but that's kind of a cut above.
Yeah.
What age do you think it is?
This is gonna be 7.
7.
Yeah, it's gonna be 7 years old. Yeah, and it's basically the same thing as Weller Antique 107, just cut down to 97 proof.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. The Antique's always one of my favorite, but you have to be ready for it.
Now, speaking of being ready for it, like I'm not ready for the next one because I don't have the bottle. But if you wanna crack open the Jefferson's Reserve and taste it,
yeah,
you know, and because this is one where it's lower in proof, but I'd love to see your comparison between the Jefferson's Reserve and the Weller, because you can buy this one.
That's a beautiful bourbon. I love that. The one time I had this before, we were on the road with Amy Helm and her road manager, super sweet guy. He knew we were bourbon fans, and he brought a bottle of Jefferson Reserve. I think it's the first time I had it, and yeah, that was that one went down well. It feels like they're from the same realm to me. I don't know what the mash bill is on a Jefferson's Reserve.
So Jefferson's Reserve, the bottle that you have is a composite of several different distilleries.
Gotcha.
Jefferson's is a classic, really good non-distillate producer for the majority of their liquid, and Trey Zollers and Chester Zoller, or Chet Zoller, would go out and they would acquire barrels from other distilleries and mingle them into their own unique product. And Trey's got a really good palate. He's
That's
really
nice.
good at blending.
Yeah,
and
it's for a 90, it's got it doesn't give up. Like it stays with you. I don't know how similar they all are, but I get a lot of tobacco out of that. There's a nice. I love a good spicy bourbon too. So there's some, for a 90 that feels like it's got a lot going on. That's nice.
So it looks like you got a contender here up against the Weller, or is the Weller still just a touch better for you?
Yeah, let me go back.
As you're doing that, I'd love for you to think back to all the various bands that you've been in, and talk about the bourbon scene from each one. How did you how was the bourbon scene? Like, I've been on the tour buses, and some of them are pretty well stocked, and some of them are just they're hopeless. But I'm curious to know.
Traveling with the Allman Brothers, when I joined in '99, it was very much no alcohol backstage, no nothing. It was really keeping Greg and Dickie moving down the road. You did, and so the longer I was there, the more I realized, you can sneak something in your bunk. You just don't want to leave things out. So the bourbon scene was whatever I had with me, which was usually whatever single barrel I could find. Like there was, I think there was a Wild Turkey single barrel that I used to get.
Kentucky Spirit.
That's it. Yeah, Kentucky Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Those were things I would kind of bring on the road, but there was no real bourbon scene on that tour unless I went out and found people. Our tour bus, once we got our bus, we kept it pretty stocked. The Clapton tour was also wasn't a lot of alcohol in that tour either. So there was definitely long spells of just drinking it.
Well, Eric Clapton's like, super sober. He's like someone they hold up. So
yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, he's we saw him not too long ago. Earlier this year, we were in London, and went out and saw him, and he's just a super together guy, and good for him, because a lot of people from his era didn't make it out so well, and oddly enough, one of the other guys that really seemed to make it out well is Steve Winwood, who really loves good wine and good cigars. So I guess you can, as long as you keep it in check.
Yeah.
There's different ways to skin a cat. So
that's right.
But
yeah, I mean, I guess in music we do look at like you kind of were brought into like a lot of like really responsible, professional, bands and tours that protected artists, but a lot of times you don't see that, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess until I was 19, all of the touring I did it was a decade from 9 to 19. It was just barreling down the road in vans, and eventually a Winnebago, and just there was no limiters on anything. You really had to kind of, my father was out with me for half of that, and then once I was out on my own, it really was just hopefully taking the advice of the people that you trusted and making it count. And, there was somebody I met when I was maybe 12. I think I was 12 years old when I met Colonel Bruce Hampton. He was somebody that became a full-on mentor. He was a mentor to tons of people, but he really became a kind of a musical father figure. And he was a person that would hit you with the right book at the right time, or the right record at the right time. He was somebody that really helped you kind of navigate the world and really judge people on their intentions and actions, and not get too bogged down in the BS. He was great about taking talented musicians and kind of just breaking their egos into 1,000 pieces, and then letting them rebuild into better people. Like, that was kind of his thing. He would see people that really took themselves too seriously, or believe the hype, or when people were blowing smoke, you would watch a lot of people come and go because of that. And Colonel was a great mentor, and making sure you were comparing yourself up, and I think about things he says multiple times a day. He's just one of those people that really stuck with you. And it was a tough loss when Colonel went, but he's one of those living presences in your life. You never go too far without thinking about how he would interpret a situation. He was I don't know if you ever got to see him or knew about him, but he was quite something.
Well, I mean, all these years later, the impression still lasts. So obviously, it's,
and a lot of great musicians came through him. He Jimmy Herring, he plays Widespread Panic with my brother. He was in the Aquarium Rescue Unit with the Colonel. He's definitely a Colonel Bruce disciple. O'Teal, who played with Colonel, and then the Allman Brothers, and then our Tedeschi Trucks Band, and now he's out with the Dead. He's a Colonel disciple. A lot of great musicians came through the Colonel, and definitely are better for it. He would always say, "I'm a minor league baseball coach." I'm just getting you guys ready. Like, he never wanted his career to go too far, and I think whenever it would start really taking off, he would kind of self-sabotage on purpose and just break it up and start from scratch. I think he liked being somewhat anonymous, which is also admirable.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you could probably touch more lives that way.
Yeah, he did directly,
Yeah, and when you reach that a level of fame too, it's like, you talk about like don't believe the hype. And you've gotten, good Lord, you've had it, from a very early age, and you know, there's not, you can't put in a room people at your skill set. You have the highest skill set for your instrument in the world, you know. So how do you personally, you know, kind of manage that, basically, you know, that fame, and how do you manage that?
I mean, it was very much guys like Bruce Hampton, and my dad was, he was always great about, in the early years, you know, making sure I was keeping my head on straight. I remember when I was 12 or 13 and on the road for a bit, and we were, you know, so whatever kind of success we had at the time. I remember him one day saying, I don't really like the way you're walking right now. Like, it was something, there was a different, like, hitch in my step, and he thought it was a little arrogant or something. And when he said it, it kind of hit me in a place that was real. I thought, he's not wrong. And so, you know, having people there to kind of, you know, let you know when you're stepping out of line. And then Colonel was always great about pointing out your heroes, and, like, you know, you think about John Coltrane or Howlin' Wolf, you think you're good? Like, think about these guys and what they ended up with and what they ended up doing, and just kind of put it in perspective a little bit. There was a funny story, and I won't name names, but when I was a kid, there was a handful of child prodigy guitar players, some that ended up making it and some that just kind of burned out, and some you don't know about. But there was one, in the local radio station in town thought they'd do like they'd get the prodigy guitar player from the north and bring him down here, and we'd do a show, and they'd have a house band, and it was just this silly thing. And I got along with them fine, and it was great. But we're doing the rehearsal, and he was definitely believing the hype, and we took a little break, and he ordered his dad to, like, Dad, go get me a Coke. Or he said something like, he ordered his dad around like a roadie, and my dad kind of popped my leg, and he said, if you ever talk to me like that, I'll whip your ass in front of everybody. And I was like, I didn't even do anything, man. but it was another time where he and the people around me always made sure that you you keep it in perspective. So that's a big part of it. And I'm really fortunate. I mean, we all do what we do because people before us that kind of paved the way. And for me, some of it was family, some of it was just our musical heritage, whether it was the Allman Brothers or Colonel Bruce or a lot of the blues artists that came before us. And we've been lucky to meet a lot of those people, and it's a humbling thing. I'd also, there's two people that stick out that everybody knows, like Willie Nelson and B.B. King are just they're ambassadors to our, for our country and in music, and just two of the sweetest, most humble people you will ever meet. And I remember meeting some of my other heroes that were maybe not quite B.B. Willie level, that were just assholes, man.
Yeah.
And you go, wait, if B.B. King's not an asshole, he grew up on a plantation. Like, he grew up in the worst circumstance, and this dude is just spreading joy and has time for everybody that he meets. And when you meet him, he makes you feel like you're long lost friends, and like he makes time for people, or did. And Willie's the same way. When you meet people like that, it puts it in perspective too. Times where we've been on the road and you get a little burnt, a little crispy, and you're like, wait, what am I bitching about? If Willie's not bitching, BB's not bitching, I should probably get it together here. So you got to have good heroes.
Good heroes are important.
It is, man. It is.
So to go back to the bourbon, who's winning in this little taste-off for you? Is it Jefferson's or is it Weller? I
went back to the Weller, and I think I'm in the Weller camp. That being said, I really did enjoy the Jefferson more than I even remembered. That's really good, and I think you can tell it's a blend, and that's not a bad thing. But it's really it's smooth. There's something. I mean, you feel it, but it's I can definitely see it's a lot of people could drink this, and feel really good about it.
And-
With nothing wrong with that.
I mean, it's Jefferson's Reserve is available in most markets, $30-$40. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a quality bourbon, man. I really like that.
So now we're going to go to the Parker's Heritage. This is an 11-year-old single barrel. Speaking of heroes, this is named after Parker Beam, who was a hero of mine in the bourbon world. He died a few years ago of ALS, and he was a master distiller before it was cool. You know, he was making whiskey before anybody really cared about it. And then, one day, bourbon starts taking off, and there's a story that his friend and PR person, Larry Cass, always tells, is that he's at Whiskey Fest, and then there's 1,000 people there just going around booths and drinking whiskey and talking to the distillers. And he's, Parker's like this. He's a farmer. He's a distiller, and he's into making whiskey, not necessarily talking to people. And he's like looking around this room on a weekday, and he turns over to Larry and he says, "Don't these people have jobs?"
That's awesome.
He just was not, he was one of the original rock stars of master distillers when they were finally getting the acclaim they deserved, and he was just always kind of like, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna go make whiskey. You guys talk it up how you want, but I'm a whiskey maker.
Love that man.
But he died of ALS in, God, I want to say it was, I think it was either 2017 or 2018, and they continue this series named after him, and they donate a portion of the proceeds to the ALS Foundation. So I always like talking about that, because ALS is a horrible disease.
Yeah.
Now this is packing some heat though. It's 122 proof, so
Yeah, you
prepare
can
the palate.
you can feel it coming already.
You're like, woo!
Oh man. Oh man.
It's doing it for you,
whiskey,
huh?
right? That's a good whiskey right there.
This
I mean,
would be.
That's 122, but it doesn't present that hot.
Mm-mm.
I don't know. There's a immediate amount, like, I know it's only 11 years, but I feel like I really taste the barrel in a good way. I feel like there's a lot of oak in that sucker. Love it though.
As my friend Kenny would say, it's got the sweet oak note. Yeah, it's sweet
Yeah.
oak.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, this is. These are single barrels, so each one would also be a little different. But I
Yeah.
think that this is the best release that has ever came out from the Parker's Heritage Collection.
That's it's a cut above, man. That's one that that's special occasion bourbon right there. I mean, I drink it all the time if I could, but that's one that I would certainly break out with the right crew. That's amazing. Really, really good.
So as we're
No, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't always taste a lot of the descriptors. I don't know if I always taste, but this one, like oak and cherry for some reason, which isn't normal for. I don't usually taste that. But that's a beautiful, beautiful whiskey.
Cherry's a beautiful note when you can find it.
Yeah.
It's not in all of them. So as we kind of go on to like a historic, or a truly, genuinely historic whiskey, I was curious, what are your favorite venues to play? Because, like, I don't ever feel like guitarists ever really get a chance to like answer that question. It's always like the lead singer, the vocalists are always, saying I like this place because it bounces off. But what's your favorite place to play, and do venues make the guitars sound differently?
Certainly. I mean, and it's funny, man, because it can really be from night to night. Certain venues that you always look forward to going back to, and I find a lot of times it's the theaters that were built in the 20s to the 50s. There's something about the acoustics in those places. But the Beacon Theater, there's something about it. I don't know if it's because I've been in that room for hundreds of shows at this point, but it just feels right. Like when you dial it in, it's magic, and the crowd feels right, and the sound coming off the stage feels right. But we do a lot of multi-night runs, so it amazes me how much it changes from one night to the next. And a lot of that's what you're pushing off the stage. There's some nights where you hit the stage a little more wound up than others, and you fill the room with a little more energy and sound. And with us, it's a very dynamic band, so a lot of it's about saving your shots at certain times, and not everyone playing too hard or too loud right out of the gate, or just making sure that there's enough room for the room to handle it. So but the Beacon's a magical spot. Red Rocks is a magical spot. It's just a beautiful place. But that place is challenging. I think it was probably the 10th show that I played at Red Rocks where it finally felt like, wow, we did it. Every other time you feel like you're just holding on and you're battling the elements. Sometimes it's rain, sometimes it's wind, and those things really affect the sound. I mean, there's a really windy night you'll be playing, and you can feel a gust of wind just blow all of the front of house sound. You just feel it, you feel like you're playing to nothing, like a vacuum all of a sudden. There were times we played with the Allman Brothers where it was raining, and I remember they built this this plastic tent around Greg, and he just had a little cutout. It looked like he was at an ice cream truck or something. There's certain places you really have to either just give in to it or hope you get the right elements. But there's a magic to that, because then when you do, it really feels like you did something. The Fox in Oakland is one that I really love, and there's not many venues that size where people can stand up. Usually it's seated, and that's just a different energy. But the Fox, the floor is all standing, so it feels like when you were playing clubs back in the day, but it's also 3,000 or 4,000 people, and it's a different energy. Those venues stand out. The Warner in D.C. I like an awful lot too, and some of them you just have memories with. A lot of these stages we played a long time, and we have a lot of history on them, and we played with a lot of people on those stages that aren't here anymore. So there's certain places you walk in and you'll remember a conversation you had with your uncle in a certain dressing room, or Kofi, or Colonel Bruce, or Greg, or B.B. King, or so we've lost a lot of really close people in the last handful of years. So some of these venues there's ghosts in them, but in a good way. You feel people, and there's certain venues where you really feel people, and I think there's something special about that. The Fox in Atlanta is one. I mean, that's the place where we were playing Colonel's 70th birthday when he went out on stage there. So that it was really hard to go back to that venue and play. It was just a few months later we had a gig there. But you feel people's presence in certain places. So I think that factors into the places that I enjoy playing. But a lot of it is those classic theaters, I gotta say. You
mentioned Greg Allman. Of course, we lost him in 2017, and he actually has there's a bit of a bourbon connection with the Allman Brothers. Corky Taylor, the founder of Kentucky Peerless Distillery, was roommates with them in military school back in the
what a trip,
whenever that was. And so he's got some good stories, and he was at the funeral, and was I was curious if before he had passed away, did he ever get to a point where he could enjoy bourbon, or was it pretty much?
I never had a drink with Greg. Smoked a lot of weed with him, but that was his only vice for the last few decades. I think he drank up his quota before I was around. Or actually, I was playing in his band when I was 13 or 14 in his solo band, and that was towards the end of his heavy drinking days. But I wasn't hanging with him on that level then. I was never around him.
Dear God, I hope not.
No, no, I wasn't that. I wasn't that story. My dad hung around to make sure I knew which way was up before he turned me free.
That's funny. So, as we go to really, again, this is an iconic bottle, which it never really got the credit it really deserved.
Man.
But this,
Look at
this
that
is
thing.
from this was from 1942. This is
Incredible.
a blend of straight whiskeys that are at least 5 years old. And the story behind this bottle and other bottles of the time, which I had to replace the cork, but the bottle is the same. Coming out of Prohibition, with the whiskey distillers didn't have a lot of stocks, so they had to do things that they had to blend a bunch of barrels together. So this could have, this could have, it doesn't say where these whiskeys are from, but these whiskeys could have came from all over the country. So there could be 5 or 6 different distilleries in here from 5 or 6 different states. But when you see it's a blend of straights, that's different than a blend or a blended whiskey. So a blend of straights means that they are blending in several distilleries that are in the whiskey's at least 2 years old. The term straight in whiskey means it's at least 2 years old.
Gotcha.
And nothing can be added to it. Whereas like an American blend, they add grain neutral spirit, so it'll have a lot of grain neutral spirit in there and coloring. And just a little bit of whiskey, so it's really not even whiskey. It's just
Gotcha.
So
I've never seen blend of straights. That's incredible.
It's starting to make a little bit of a comeback, but for a long time the term blend was a dirty word in American whiskey. But this is when they were doing it right. So this, my friend, is from 1942, and the uniqueness of that year was the U.S. government mandated that the distillery shut down in October of 1942 because they needed the grains for the war effort.
Yeah.
My
My grandfather was in 1942. Where would he have been? Maybe in Ireland. On his way over. He's 101, still kicking.
Oh wow!
Old Claude H. Trucks. Him and Elmer T. Lee, they had their 100th birthday together.
I love that.
Well, man, thank you for sharing this. This is
cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Incredible. Yeah.
I mean, it's whiskey from another time,
Yeah, it doesn't get any better to me than that. Man, that sucker held up too.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with that. Holy cow!
It was perfectly stored. Good condition. The only downside to these old bottles is that once you crack open that cork, you really do need to drink it.
Yeah.
You can't let that much oxygen get in there for too long and play around with it. You need to get it where there's less oxygen in there, which are gas pumps and things that you can use.
Yeah.
Or you can put it in another container, or you just drink it with friends.
So how long would you give it once you open it?
These bottles that have been sitting around for a long time, and this is me. This is my theory. But I think you've got to like finish it within, 6 months, unless you have a plan in place to, basically nullify the amount of oxygen that's getting in there.
Well, that's good to know. We have a few that we should probably work through soon.
But I'm also
few old
talking
bottles.
about bottles from like 60s and before.
Yeah.
You know, so anything that's recent would be a different story.
Yeah.
Just because they have been sitting around for so long.
There's nothing like the old. Uh-oh. I hope that
I
wasn't
just
that
dropped
bottle.
I just dropped my glass of 1942 Four Roses. But the glass didn't break.
Hey, if you have to get down there and.
That's all I got left.
Oh man.
That's like
Oh man.
that's like the bottle's like, drink me in 6 months, motherfucker. Fuck you. You're gonna drop your glass.
That's amazing. That's the extreme high end of pouring one out for your fellas that couldn't be here.
Yeah, that.
Wow.
At least I got a little sip left. So,
Well, cheers to that last sip.
cheers. I mean, you see, it's got just a little bit there. No, I think
There's
I did.
nothing like those vintage bourbons, man. There's nothing like it.
Yeah,
It's just
And they're-
so good.
they're so unique. They're so unique, so different.
Yeah.
They've got, you got to think about the grain was different then, the water was different. You're looking at first growth wood in most cases.
What a trip.
There weren't
I didn't even think
no
of that.
computers, so
Yeah.
it's great.
The air was different.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Yeah,
so
s-
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say let's take a look back through our whiskeys here. We had two really, stellar classics. The Four Roses and the Parker's Heritage, and then we have one kind of like rising star in the Weller Single Barrel, which, a lot of people are gonna be like, "Screw you! I can't get that bottle," which I'm sorry, but it's good. Really, really, really
It does
good.
happen to be good.
It happens to
you
be
know-
good.
Everyone would say that about the Four Roses as well. So, no one's finding that sucker on the shelf.
No.
Well, I mean, the Four Roses is just that's next level. You can't. That's the best bourbons I've ever tasted. I would put this right in that handful, and most of the other ones were late nights at a place like Jack Rose's, or we found this whiskey bar in Nagoya, Japan, where it was this older guy that just had a ridiculous collection, and they were insanely normal prices.
Oh wow.
We just sat at the bar and drank old bourbon with him, and it was really something. Yeah, but that's a different experience. That's like, I find this with vintage instruments too. Like a 59 Les Paul is, it's one of the holy grail instruments, and they're $250,000 or $500,000, and which is why I don't have one. But you play them and you go, fuck, they're really, really good. Like I want it to not be, but there's something about the great vintage bourbons, and that Four Roses. I wasn't even familiar with that one. That's a real treat. So yeah, that one's out ahead of the pack. It's a good pack, but I don't know how you would.
I'm going to have to lick it up off the floor. I mean, I can't just.
I wouldn't
can't
judge
just,
you at all. I might judge you if you didn't.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, good man. I mean, and the Parker's Heritage. Yeah, I mean that's an amazing thing. I'd put that right a shade above the Weller, which I love. And those were all four yeses. Those are all four great drinkers, but yeah, I mean, pretty wildly different from the first to the last.
It's interesting. Like going on this little whiskey journey. It's no different of like trying to find what you like, and you're a whiskey drinker and you kind of know what you like, but this is the process. You have to keep tasting, you have to keep playing around out there. It's almost it's almost like music,
Totally. And,
You-
and there's
you-
certain things that are really good that you might not like, but you know it's really good. You like the quality you can taste generally. I've found lately. I forget where I had it for the first time. It might have been in D.C. But I had one of those like a 1980s old granddad, just a
Oh
a
yeah,
bottle
from
of-
National Distillers, 86 proof. Just
86 proof, man. It was one of the best things I've ever had. I've been on the search for
Yeah.
that ever since. And for a while, you could find them for not much money, like less than you're talking $100 for a bottle from the 80s, or even less for a while. You could find them, but all that stuff's drying up. But I love
now-
that stuff.
Now that we know that you are a dusty hunter, there are friends of the show who will chime in and say, "Hey, send him my spreadsheet. Hey, I've got like a case of 70s turkey. See if he's interested." So
I got guitars to trade.
yeah,
I don't have any
You're-
gigs, so I don't know how far I can dip into the account, but I definitely have some guitars laying around.
Vinyl might do it.
I
For
have
people
vinyl too.
who might be on the lookout for a trade, another bottle. I mean, you got a nice collection back there. I'm seeing some Pappies. You got the classic Hirsch, the 16-year-old.
Yeah, there's I have a lot of the older style Wellers too that we were getting before the bottle change, and one of my favorites of all time is the Weller Centennial. And
Oh yeah,
that's one of the best pours I've ever had. So
Oh,
we found a
yeah,
few of
white
those
label.
bottles. Yeah, and that square bottle that they put out. It's almost like the Elmer T bottle from
Yeah.
I don't know, was it 80s or 70s? I'm not sure when that would have been.
so
Maybe
that
early
was
90s.
yeah, that was the United Distillers time frame. So it was a bit in the 90s.
Gotcha.
So that was pre Sazerac, and yeah, it's good
Yeah.
stuff, man.
And here's the one I have to send you, so I need to get an address at some point. But that's the our Trucks Family Reserve
Oh, I love that.
full-proof label that my brother Dwayne, who's a great drummer, his wife Cameron Herring did the label for us. But it's a really good Weller full-proof. It's holding up. That's been the quarantine booze of choice.
I love it. Well,
a few drops
know,
of water, you're good to go.
before we canceled canceled it, because of COVID and everything, I co-founded and co-produced a festival called Bourbon and Beyond.
Oh yeah.
And we had
I did that with
we
you.
had a lot of bluesy stuff there. I was the bourbon side of it.
Yeah.
Danny Wimmer Presents was the everything else. And I curate the panels, and once that gets back going, man, I'm thinking that we could have a great round table of picking barrels and and sipping whiskey. And do you ever sip a little bit before you go on stage these days, or do you wait?
I always keep I don't sip before, but I put a glass of whiskey on stage and kind of throughout the show go back to it and visit it.
Oh,
So
what
I
whiskey's that?
I mean, it depends on what we have on the bus. If I feel like we've had a few good shows in a row, I might pour a little bit of Weller 12 in there. kind of gauge it on. It's a little bit performance based. Like how well the shows have been going. If I feel like I have my act together, I'll reward myself with better bourbon.
So we know how you're feeling if you're like sneaking up a little bit of Jim Beam White on the backstage. Then.
Oh yeah, no, I would have deserved it for whatever reason.
So what do you
pocket
got?
of whiskey.
What do you got cooking? What do you got cooking right now, music wise?
We've been doing a lot of writing as a band, even though we're not all together. We've a few of us have gotten together, but we had this idea where we took and for now I won't even throw out what it is, but we took a book that we had everyone read, an old poem, and then we just had everyone to take a stab at writing towards it, so everyone's kind of taking different angles at different bites at the same apple, and just as kind of an exercise in writing and keeping productive. And we've been kicking a lot of ideas back and forth. We have our studio here behind our house, so Me and Bobby T's our engineer. We've been mixing a lot of stuff that we just haven't been able to get around to. A lot of old live shows. We had this really amazing concert that we were a part of in 2015 with the surviving members of the Mad Dogs and Englishmen, which was the Joe Cocker Band. Mm-hmm. And it was we had Leon Russell and maybe 12 members of the original band in our group, so it was 20 people on stage, and it was just a magical few days of rehearsal, and then the show was great. So we've been mixing that live show. We have an old vintage mid-60s Neve console, kind of like it's also like a great whiskey where there's something about that era and that sound. So we've been out there analog mixing to tape. And then we did a show with Trey Anastasia. We did the Layla record last year at Lock-In, this festival. So we're in the middle of mixing that now. We're trying to stay busy, you know. I traded in my sports car for an RV so I could take the family on a trip to see the grandparents in the middle of all this, because traveling is just a mess, and you can kind of you can hole up. And I was feeling a little nostalgic for the old band RV days. So about 4 days ago, I parted with my really fast sports car. I'd been getting too many speeding tickets anyways. So I put myself on probation and went full Clark Griswold, and we're leaving tomorrow morning. We're piling in, going to go see Susan's family. So we're trying to stay busy, trying to stay safe. I was telling you earlier, my grandfather's 101, and my parents live down the street. So we're trying to really stay on our toes with that. We don't want to get anyone sick. And if you were in Patton's army and marched across France and Germany in the mid 40s, you don't need to be catching a bug from your grandkids. So we're trying to keep everyone around us safe too, and focusing on that. But it's an odd time. I think everybody is everyone's trying to stay sane the best way they can, and a lot of hanging with the people that are close to you. I'm enjoying the time with our kids. I mean, my son is leaving in a few weeks for college, heading to Florida State University, and
that's the party school. Party school.
Well, luckily for him, he's much smarter and more together than I am. Like, he is. I don't worry about him very much. It's a weird time to be sending your kid off to school when you don't even know if there's going to be in-person classes and everything. Our daughter is 15, and I mean, since they were born, me and Susan have both been on the road nonstop with our solo bands and everything else. So we're trying to really enjoy this time while we have it with the four of us at home. And it's the most time we've ever had all together as a unit. And so trying to be really thankful for the things that are great, and stay as busy as you can. And we're all in the same boat at this point. It's hard to make plans or really do anything. So you do what you can.
Well, you from a creative perspective too, like, you can. The writing seems to be something that a lot of musicians are doing, but like they can't get out and perform, and it's eating them alive. But you got bourbon, so you're grounded.
And I will say I love playing, and I love playing live, and I love being out with the band and everything that comes with that. But I don't have that. I don't have that chip that a lot of people have, where they need the feedback. Or I'm pretty content at home or fishing, or like I miss being productive, and I miss. There's a feeling that you get when you're playing with a band and improvising and digging into these, just hitting these places or exploring musically, that you can't get sitting around playing in the studio, or as much as you sit down and practice and shed. It's not the same thing as, like, I think it's like sports. There's a difference between practicing and being out in live action. And there's just a feeling you get after a great night of music, or even on a bad night. There's one or two moments where you really feel like your feet come off the floor a little bit. I miss that part of it. And I miss the communal thing that happens with the audience. But I'm oddly content. I'm enjoying the time while I can. It kind of eats on some people more than others. But I feel lucky that I don't mind sitting in one place. I've never done it, so it's new to me. But I'm finding that I enjoy it. We have a little farm up in Middle Georgia, and one of my best friends, longest musical friends, is Jimmy Herring, who's an incredible guitar player. and who is just addicted to bass fishing. So we have
nice.
We have a bass lake up on our property, and he's been up there, I think, almost every single day since the lockdown. And the few times we've been able to make it up to the farm, he shows up. Set your watch to it around 3:30. He's showing up. He fishes until sunset, and we'll go and talk to him, and he goes, "I feel bad. I haven't played a lot, and I might be as happy as I've ever been." He's just getting to fish every day, and I love it. And now he's back to shedding a few hours a day because he practices as much as anybody I know. But he had a good few months of like really changing gears and just being out and being outside. And so that I think as much of that as you can do is good too. Get out and breathe some air if you can.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And remove yourself from from the digital world and just go live.
It's important, man. Turn the TV off. Everyone's yelling at you. You don't have to listen to it all the time. I mean, I read a few newspapers every day, and you stay up on it, but control the things you can, and try to make the world a little bit of a better place. There's a lot of work to do.
I agree. I do believe that this right here is one way to make the world a better place responsibly.
Amen.
If you can have a sip with a friend, do it. If you have to do it virtually, do it that way. But
amen.
But Derek, thank you so much for coming on the show. Just an absolute blast having you.
Back at you, man.
I meant what I said. I think you're the greatest, and it's just great to sit here and sip whiskey with you. And I got to go lick the floor now. I mean, so this stuff, the fumes are coming up from the floor.
I'm with you.
It smells good.
Well, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you sharing this with me, and look forward to doing it in person someday. So hopefully the first of many hangs.
Right on, man. I look forward to that. Back to that tour bus loaded with all the good stuff.
I'll be ready for you.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, man.